Welcome to tonight's amazing webinar. This has been such a fun series with lots of learning. We have Lauren Lieberman and Pamela Beach joining us to share all sorts of nuggets of information. But before we start, we do want to offer to those who may need Spanish translation. So we're going to allow Ala Lily to share that in Spanish if you are needing that this evening.
Muy buenas tardes. Si alguien necesita interpretación en español, por favor, pásense al canal de español y con gusto les atendemos. Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you so much. So without any longer, Lauren and Pamela, go ahead and take it away.
Right. Welcome, everyone. So our talk is Fitness in Youth with Visual Impairments and Deafblindness. And we're so excited to be here. And this is the last of our series. So it's a little sad in that sense. We've had so much fun developing all these. So I know some of you have attended different talks. So we'll try to highlight some different pieces from that, but a little bit more about us in case you don't know us. Let Lauren introduce herself.
Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm Lauren Lieberman, and I am a distinguished service professor at SUNY Brockport in the Kinesiology, Sports Studies, and Physical Education Department. And I co-direct the Institute of Movement Studies for Individuals with Visual Impairment and Deafblindness with my dear friend, Dr. Pamela Beach. And I taught at Perkins School for the Blind in the Deaf Blind program. If any of my Perkins friends are here, hello, although they could teach this webinar themselves. I teach in the adapted physical education area, undergrad and grad, and I founded and I direct Camp Abilities in Brockport, New York, and it's a sports camp for kids with visual impairment or deafblindness. We'll talk a bit about that tonight. And I have 7 books in visual impairment and physical activity, and Pam and I are actually working on the second edition of the Physical Education and Sport book with Paul Ponchilia. Very excited about that. And just very excited to be here and share a lot of the research and work that we've been doing and resources as well.
All right, thank you. And I'm Pamela Beach. I'm also at SUNY Brockport in the same department, and I co-direct the Institute of Movement Studies for Individuals with Visual Impairments and Deafblindness with Lauren. So we co-founded it and co-direct. I teach classes mostly in motor learning, motor development. I do some aging related courses, and Lauren and I do a ton of research and workshops and webinars and videos and all kinds of pretty much everything related to visual impairment. We try to really push research to practice. We want things to be usable and we want them to be available. So we'll talk about a lot of our resources and how you can get them tonight. So again, happy to be here. All right. So if you've been at some of our other talks, we have shown a video to give you a little more background on our institute, but we're not going to show that again now. But we have 4 main areas in our institute. So we do a lot of programming, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Camp Abilities. So Camp Abilities is our big summer camp that began at SUNY Brockport, I think 27 years ago. Is that what it is now, Lauren? So we just celebrated our 25th anniversary, but it was our 25th in-person anniversary. So COVID delayed that a couple of years, but as many of you are aware, it has expanded to many areas across the United States and abroad. So we also do some mini camps and many workshops and activities. So through all of these, we provide a lot of leadership opportunities for our students who then become the leaders in the field and spread that knowledge all over the place. So and education wise, again, a lot of our resources, we try to make those available for anyone that is interested and can use that. And we are always conducting a lot of research, mostly focused on movement, but we get into some other areas as well, like wellness. We're dabbling in mental health, self-advocacy, and a variety of different areas. All right, so I wanted to talk about why motor skills are so important first. I know the topic is fitness, and some of you might have come to one or both of the talks I did with Melanie Perot, where we were focusing on motor development and looking at some different areas with motor development. And while this is on fitness, I just wanted to circle back and talk about the importance of motor skills again. So motor skills are really, really foundational in developing someone that is going to be fit and active throughout their lifespan. So just a couple different points I wanted to hit with that. So rather than just having someone focus just on the fitness aspect, we want to try to develop the whole person and make them a motor competent individual, which will much more likely to lead them to a much more healthy lifestyle. All right. Okay, so fundamental motor skills, which is one of the things that we talked about in one of our previous webinars, those are your basic skills. We break them down into locomotor skills, things like running, jumping, hopping, skipping, galloping, leaping, really anything that gets you from point A to point B. And so those are considered anything beyond walking. Walking would be a motor milestone, and then anything beyond that, such as running, then gets you into fundamental motor skills or locomotor skills. And then we also have object control skills, are also known as ball skills. So anything that you're manipulating something. So throwing and catching and kicking and striking and dribbling, all of those kinds of skills. And so a lot of research is really showing that by developing those skills, and in particular, developing those at an early age, is very important to lead to a much more healthy lifestyle. So it leads to a more active individual, a fitter individual, and a healthier individual. So children's skill competence is really the primary underlying mechanism that engages them in physical activity. If you think about a child that feels competent or is competent in some motor skills, is much more likely to enjoy a pickup game or play with their friends, or even try something that that is totally new to them, because they feel like, okay, I've learned other things, I can learn these things too. And that's going to encourage them to be a lot more active. And physical activity levels at each stage influences the next stage. So it's not this isolated, you're super active as a kid and then it can just, it doesn't mean it can't, but you're much more likely, if you're active as a young kid and you're learning these new skills and you're engaging in a variety of activities, you're much more likely to take that on to adolescence, and then much more likely to continue that as an adult throughout your lifespan. So again, all of those benefits that you're getting from being physically active is going to maintain and continue across that whole lifespan. So it's really, really important. And so we can think about these fundamental motor skills as building blocks. And if we really want to go back some steps and go super early in development, I can give an example of just with reflexes. You have a stepping reflex, which is indicative of walking. So it's kind of that movement, the bilateral movement of the feet, and it gives that basic coordination pattern that is very similar to walking. And then it's a building block. Walking is obviously a building block to running and all of the different locomotor skills. And we can also think about that in regards to ball skills. So striking, for example, can be very context specific, and it's different for golf than it is for baseball, than it is for tennis, than it is for volleyball. All are different types of striking, some with implements, some without. The implements vary, the striking pattern varies, but once you have that certain level of competence at the basic skills, such as striking, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to transfer to those context specific skills. All right, so this is really across all individuals, and we just have to constantly remind ourselves that we should not be holding kids with visual impairments back. They have just as much potential. They absolutely can be just as active as their sighted peers. They absolutely can be developing these motor skills. They can be involved in fitness activities, and we shouldn't be limiting what they're doing. The key is to find what we can do to modify the activities and really encourage them so that they can engage in just as much as everyone else. And it's critically important. If we start to let them feel like they can't do these things and they're left behind at an early age, it really becomes more and more difficult to overcome that, particularly in adolescence. It can be a hard time if they haven't developed some of those basic skills before. They don't have a perceived motor competence. They don't feel that they can do these things. It's really hard to overcome that. So trying to give them as many opportunities as possible when they're really young. And it's important to think of what are some of the barriers. I know we've talked about some barriers in some of our different talks, but thinking about really that limited opportunity, that's our biggest barrier. We're getting limited opportunities in many different domains, but largely could be in PE class. Maybe the PE teacher isn't versed in how to advocate for the child. They're not versed in how to add different modified equipment or modify the task to be able to involve the child, and so they might be limiting them. Parents can often be limiting them as well.
Somebody up. So Natamara has their hand up.
All right.
Yep, I was just gonna, oh, now it's down.
All right. Are they, Melissa, can they
They
talk
can write.
audio, or do we need?
Oh,
Nope.
no, it's just a mistake.
sorry.
Sorry, it's just a mistake.
No worries.
It's all right.
But anyone feel free to put a question in there. I'm totally fine with being interrupted. Happy to jump in on something, especially when your topic is on your mind at the moment. So feel free to pop questions in now or at the end. Either is totally fine. So, but yeah, so think about some of those barriers, and parents can be a huge barrier. If they're trying to shield and protect their child, then that child can be really limiting what they're doing. They're not experienced to a lot of different things. And then they start to develop this fear, which becomes really difficult to overcome. All right, so we're going to get into just some ideas of task analysis. So breaking down a skill, an activity, so that we can modify it and make it easier to understand for the individual, or make some type of modification. And I also want to mention, so we'll be talking about this later, but some of our resources, we have the motor development curriculum, which we cover when we've talked about previously, but this covers fundamental motor skills as well as fitness skills. And we'll be showing a little bit of the video from that. So we have available the free book as well as the video. To give some examples, it's coming from this. So with curl ups, so some examples of task analyses is lying on the back with knees bent, palms resting on thighs, and then curling the shoulders up off the floor and trying to really get them to focus on engaging those abdominal muscles. Sometimes even having them kind of touch their abdominal muscles to see and feel that their abdominal muscles are tensing, and you want them to be aware of what should be working. So sometimes having them touch their abdomen to try to feel that. They can also slide their hands up to their knees to kind of get an idea of moving up. And we'll see this in the video as well, but slowly lowering their torso, then back to the mat. And the feet should be remaining on the floor at all times. Oftentimes having someone sit on the feet can be helpful as well. Right, so here we've got some pictures that we'll also show, but with this we've got a couple of cues. So a cue could be call a cadence or use a pre-recorded cadence to get that timing down, so they're thinking of doing multiples of these. So once they've got the movement down and they understand what the skill is and what's expected of them, and if they have correct form. So the one picture, it's kind of hard to tell, but her hand is on a small like matchbox car. So it could be a ball, it could be anything that's wheeled. And so then feeling the movement kind of going forward and back, that sliding motion. So I gave the example before of on the knees, but if you wanted to try something different, so different cues obviously work for different people. try different things until something clicks and it works. All right, so another cue, touch the knee or shoulder to cadence, all right, to try to help get them to understand the timing, so that can be helpful if they aren't able to hear the cadence with a pre-recorded one. All right, and then a couple examples for push-ups. And so there are so many different modifications that one can do with push-ups. So starting with it being as basic and as light initially, and then progressively increasing the challenge of it. So one way is starting prone, so lying face down on a mat or a floor, something fairly comfortable, and placing their palms on the mat. You want them to be around shoulder distance, so maybe kind of bringing their hands to their shoulders or showing them where the shoulders is, holding their legs straight and slightly apart, and their toes tucked under. So sometimes you might need a little bit more cueing or physical guidance to help get them in the right position. Pushing off the floor with their arms until their arms are straight. Body remains straight with no arch in the back or rise in the buttocks. They can do this from knees. Initially, you can use some different types of equipment. They can feel touching that with their chest so that they can kind of get that change. All right, so body remains straight with no rise in the buttocks, and then they lower down to about 90 degrees. So you might also want to give them a cue by, touching their shoulder or their back to let them know when they've gone down far enough until they start to understand that distance, and they can start to continue that a little bit more. All right, so this is just an example. So in this picture, we have a child trying a modified push-up. So she has her knees off the ground and her legs are straight. Her toes are touching the floor. Her arms are wider than her shoulders, and she has like a small exercise ball under her. So then that gives her an idea of when she's come down far enough. So there's some different objects that you could put under their chest so that they know when they've reached approximately 90 degrees. And this, I'm just going to show part of this video, which is covering some of the same things, but just so then you know that you have this available. And this is a much longer video. This is the one that is associated with the motor development curriculum textbook, which again, both are available for you.
And they're available on the Camp Abilities website.
Lie on back with knees bent, palms resting on thighs, shoulders up off floor. Hands slide up to touch knees, lower torso to mat. And repeat. Cue, up 2, 3, down 2, 3. Touch knee or shoulder to cadence for students with deafblindness. Skill, push-ups. Lie prone. Palms on mat under or slightly wider than shoulders. Legs straight and slightly apart, toes tucked under. Push up off the floor until arms are straight. Body remains straight. Lower the body and repeat.
Call this a modified push-up with the bent knees.
Teacher modification. A square of cardboard with a 90-degree angle may assist students who are blind to judge 90 degrees. The knees may remain bent for a modified push-up if necessary. This skill may be done standing up against a wall.
Call that a wall push-up. Wall push-up.
As a lead-in therapy. Use a small therapy ball under the chest.
All right. So just to wrap up kind of this intro, it really can't be understated the potential that children with visual impairments and deafblindness have. So exposing them to a lot of different activities, really trying to encourage them to try new things, keep practicing, and being open to learning those skills is very, very, very important, especially early on. So being involved with sports, games, activities, getting some of those basic fundamental motor skills, and just being physically active so that they can really start to meet some of that potential. So a delay can really set them behind, not only on those motor skills, but again, that importance for being physically active, having that lifelong physical activity, which is going to affect their potential health status, fitness indices, overall happiness, social aspects. So many things are associated with having an active lifestyle. So just think about some of the different things that we'll be highlighting, some activities that can be done alone or with friends at a gym with some modifications so that they can learn how to use. But running is an essential skill that is used in really every sport. So it's very critical to get some of the basics down early. It's a nice solid foundation. But other activities like swimming, hiking, being outside with that fresh air is so healthy and important. They might be interested in your typical fitness activities like weight training and more of the gym type of training, but they might like to do things that are outside or kayaking. So there's a lot of different things that they can explore, whether they're sports related or not. But remember that the importance of learning those motor skills, being physically active, and trying to continue to build upon that.
Thank you, Pam. I just want to tell a cool story. One of our campers, Braden, in his middle school, they weren't going to let him be on his cross country team. We had to advocate for him to be on cross country, and his running form was not that great. He didn't have very good physical education when he was younger, but he came to Camp Abilities and he realized that he was a good runner if he was practicing his form properly. And that's a whole nother thing. We can get into that. We'll talk a little more about running, but I'm just proud to say that not only is he on his cross country team, he just did the Rochester half marathon in an hour and 37 minutes, something like that. And so his running form is terrific and he has amazing endurance. And I think those people in his middle school that weren't letting him be on his cross country team are I think they've kind of woken up and understood that kids with visual impairments can do any sport that they pick. And he proved that. So, and I think it's really important. Running is a foundational activity. And I think it's important that we teach all kids how to run properly. And unfortunately, a lot of kids, I mean, you all know kids who are blind who kind of have that stiff walk, run with their arms straight out. And it feels more comfortable because they're nervous and they're afraid and they might never have learned how to swing their arms. But unfortunately, they're prime candidates for bullying and teasing. And it happens a lot in physical education, unfortunately, when kids don't know how to do the proper form. So what we have to do is we have to teach the kids all the different guide running techniques, teach them the proper form so that they can make choices. And so we're just going to talk about a few guide running techniques, some techniques that kids can use with a human guide or with a guide, and then also things they can do independently. And so guide running, obviously you can have somebody run with you or they can hold on to your elbow and that both people's arms can swing just like you would if you were human guiding somebody. And so that's a way that a lot of our athletes choose to run. If they're a lot taller than the person, I'm a short person. Some of my friends that I run with, they just put their hand on my shoulder instead of my elbow. But communication is key. And also it's really helpful if the guide runner is faster than the person with a visual impairment, because you don't want to slow them down if you can. Unfortunately, or I don't know if this is good or bad, but a lot of our athletes where I live, this is called Section 5 of New York State. A lot of our kids have gotten so fast that it's very hard to find guide runners for them. It's kind of bittersweet because that oftentimes it's very difficult to find, but the schools will now pay their guide runners. So it's kind of cool that good runners will get paid to run as guide runners. So a tether is a short rope. It's literally just like a shoelace or a rope or a towel. And it's the person's preference. Some of our friends use elastic And actually one of our students is blind and she uses like a waist belt that's elastic to the other person. But it's just called a tether, and it has a knot on either end, and both people can hold it and both people can swing their arms. And this is a common technique that's used in the Paralympics and elite running.
Lauren, there's a hand has been raised.
Oh, Justin. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah.
So I use I just recently got my hands on the APH. I guess it's the running kit. It's like a backpack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So using that, I have a student, a third grader, who's completely blind and about to do a turkey trot with his instructional assistant. We were thinking of using the elastic bands with the keter on it to tether. Would that be advisable, or do you think that would take away from the motion of the running?
You mean if both people held on, if it's a short elastic band?
Yeah, it's actually two tethers, but it's it connected by a keter, and we just had like one tether wrapped around his wrist, then the keter, then the other tether wrapped around her wrist. But of course, again, like I said, you're not getting the feel for the arm movement. So I wasn't sure if perhaps it would be better to do
No,
something.
as long as both people can swing their arms, that's all you need. So
Okay.
it's, yeah, but I just be careful if you wrap it around the wrist, if one person falls or it could, typically we have them hold on to it. So if they had to let go, they
Sure.
could.
Well, and that's actually why I did the elastic band, because I figured there would be less likelihood that there would be any falling or anybody would drag each other down, because there's a little bit elasticity to them.
Right. So that's a great point. So when you hold on to a human guide's elbow, you can feel their arm moving
right.
back and forth. But once a student gets that motion of swinging their arms back and forth, then it's fine to use a tether and just saying that's one. Pam and I have done a lot of research on running techniques. The flight phase and the arm swing are the two most difficult things to teach. But
Yeah.
once they get that, you're golden. You can just use a tether. I mean, we even have some of our runners run independently with no tether or no human guide. They just run to the sound.
That's wow. Yeah, we're still quite a ways away from him doing that. We are working on the mechanics of running with him in particular, but that's great feedback. I thoroughly
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you,
it.
Justin. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we've found that, I mean, every runner's a little different too in their preferences. So sometimes it's nice to give them a couple different options. I've heard the elastic, some runners don't like the elastic because it's kind of pulling on them and it's giving different feedback because, you know, elastic changes. So I would just recommend trying some different things, giving something a shot, but then seeing if maybe a different style might be a little bit better. But yeah, holding on to it, I think is safer.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks, Justin. So one of the things we found that was very successful, especially for kids who might not have a guide or might not have the person who can run with them, it's called circular running. And down in the bottom corner, you'll see, yes, to be totally transparent, this is a dog leash. It's one of those things, you put it in the ground, you pull it tight, and it just runs circularly around the stake in the ground. The wonderful thing about it is kids can run anytime as long as they want. And so it can be in their backyard, in their front yard. You could do it in the middle of a track. And so the nice thing is I have the kids put their cane and either like their phone or a radio or a sound device so they know where their cane is. And I also just have the kids either do it for time or for the number of steps. Circular running, it works out great. You can make it as big as your space or as small as you need. And it works out great. If you just get over the fact that maybe this is a dog leash, I can't remember what it's called, a dog thing. Okay, and then Ashley said if the runner is low vision, they may be able to run alone on a track since they can see the white lines, white on the black. Yeah, definitely. If a runner has low vision, they certainly can run on a track, and a lot of tracks do have a lot of good visibility. It's a tether. Oh, you mean you'd call this a tether? Circular running with a tether. Thank you, Shelley. And then another way, and I want to just thank Justin, because this is also something that we created that APH is selling. It's called the Walk Run for Fitness Kit, but you could literally, it's just literally rope that's pulled across the gym or between two trees. You just have to make sure that there's at least a knot on either end. And we typically, you'll see there's a carabiner here with a loop on it. And that way the kids can run along the guide wire and swing their arms while they're running. And if the rope is pulled taut, they can run without fear. And this is a great way that kids can run at home. They can run in a park. They could run during their free time and run for time or distance. But again, there has to be some kind of tactile and or auditory warning before they get to the end. So this is called a guide wire. And it can be as long or as short as you want it, but I usually have the kids walk it several times to see the distance of it before they start running. And you'll be surprised at how fast and how free they can run on these things. And then also, this is an APH sound source. We actually just hang this on a big cone, and the kids can just run between sound sources. And it's a great way to have freedom and to be able to run independently, just to run to a sound source. If you don't have an APH sound source, by the way, they are on quota funds, you can just run to like a bell or a phone or a sound if they have enough space and a sound that's distinct enough. And then of course, treadmills are universal. I really think all kids should learn how to use treadmills, because if you want to run and you want to run consistently, treadmills are in hotels, they're in high schools, they're in fitness centers, they're universal. The hard thing about it, as far as I know, there's no auditory treadmill. So it's great to put the tactile markings on them, but using a treadmill will help you get your workout in when you don't have somebody to run with. Maybe it's crappy weather and maybe you just need to get that workout in. And I have several friends who are marathon runners or even elite runners, and they run on their treadmill just to get their miles in, and it's great. It's a great option, and then you don't have to rely on other people. One other thing I want to say before we go on is, as many of you do know, that Guiding Eyes does train their guide dogs to be guide runners. I mean, to be running guide dogs. So you can actually, when you apply for a guide dog, you can actually check off that you want a running guide dog. And then you also have another option to run with your guide dog, which has freed up so many runners from having to rely on a human guide. And it's safe. They might not be as fast as a human guide, but they're also reliable, and they know your neighborhood, they know your running areas, and people have gotten a lot of satisfaction out of the running guide dogs. So what's really cool on our Campabilities website, under instructional materials, we have a lot of tip sheets. We have tip sheets for object control, locomotor skills, and we have tip sheets for running. And our tip sheets for running, there's the link underneath this at the bottom of this PowerPoint. And you can actually just print that out and give it to people, but it goes through all the different guide running techniques that I just talked about. And then Ashley said that all my high school tracks had white lines, and so tracks at our recreation centers. So how do you teach running, since maybe show them in slow motion or just describe it? She said, I'm visually impaired. Most of my instruction was by verbal descriptions. I love treadmills and had them ever since I was a kid. Good recommendation. Thank you. Ashley, great point. So running is kind of tough to teach the flight phase and the arm swing. We do teach that on a treadmill. And so in our video, actually, we have one of our kids actually feeling, it's awesome. It's Marla Runyon. You know, she's a famous Olympian with a visual impairment, feeling her arms moving and feeling her flight phase to understand what that looks like. Because otherwise it's kind of hard to understand the cadence and how to do that. Okay. Thank you, Melissa. So Melissa just put up the tip sheet link. But I think that's a great way, that aha moment of, oh, I get it. But the other thing is, if you put a child on a treadmill and you push them up to about a 6 minute, just trying to think of how fast, if 6 minute or 6.0, which is a 10-minute mile, then they can start feeling that cadence and start swinging their arms and moving their legs to that flight phase. Okay, so
Sorry,
ahead.
I jumped ahead to a different video since we were asked the question about how to teach running. So this gets into some of that, and there's 3 full-length videos to get into more detail. Again, they're all free and available at the instructional materials. But I just wanted to jump ahead since that was brought up and to show some of this video.
Visually impaired. In this video,
Pamela, when you muted yourself, we lost sound.
environment modification.
Oh, sorry, I was afraid that would make feedback.
No?
Hi,
Okay.
I'm Ashley. I'm an elite paratriathlete. I got my start in athletics in middle school when I joined my school track team. As I progressed through high school, I found that my track coaches struggled a little bit to accommodate me as a blind athlete. It's important for everyone to feel like they're a part of a team, and I was fortunate enough growing up to have coaches that were willing to try to accommodate me and to make sure that I had the same experience as myself.
Following are concepts to use for including runners with visual impairments. The first concept is appropriate language. We suggest that coaches use clear, descriptive language and use the student's name to get his or her attention before giving feedback. In this scene, our coach uses the term 90-degree angle and says the student's name before giving feedback. As with all students, it helps to say the student's name first because it catches the student's attention and identifies to whom the coach or teacher is speaking. By yelling out a suggestion to a group, a student with a visual impairment or blindness might think you are talking to someone else because she cannot see to whom you are giving feedback. The second concept, also related to language, is using verbal cues to communicate information about the obstacles along the trail. Guides should give verbal cues that explain what the obstacle is or what the athlete should do to avoid the obstacle. Both will likely take too much time. It is also helpful to have preset cues with which the athlete will understand exactly what you want him to do when the cues are used. For example, the guide and runner might decide to use the verbal cue high knees to inform the athlete to lift her knees higher when there is an increase in the grade of the terrain. Here in our video, we have an athlete with her guide exploring an obstacle of a branch and then practicing with the cues 3, 2, 1, leap as the short cue phrase. In the second scene, the athlete and the guide have already decided that if a puddle comes up, the guide will move and hold her arms slightly behind her torso and use the phrase, puddle in 3, 2, 1, clear.
Okay, so we do have a lot of very specifics on teaching the basic mechanics of running. We just didn't have those quite queued up here, but again, we'll show you where all those videos are, and we go into a lot more depth. So I'm going to jump back. We were actually gonna.
While you're jumping back, there is a comment from Ashley. Running is very fast, so it's hard and does not lend itself to hand over hand. I learned this ball skill like dribbling, hand over hand, but running is different matter. Can you share the links in the video you mentioned? I mean, the links to those running videos. I shared the page, but because I know you guys have so many videos on there.
I'll kind of talk about the videos at the end and highlight the ones that we're talking about and just visually show you like where they are. But again, they're all on there, but you're right. We do have a lot of resources, so I'm sure it can get a little overwhelming. So the next one we wanted to just show a little bit about swimming. We're not going into too much depth with swimming right now, but swimming is quite often we find the favorite activity when we've surveyed students of all ages, they really like the swimming content. So it's another one to think about involving kids in.
Verbal instruction. Our coach here predominantly uses verbal instruction with minimal physical guidance to introduce arm and face positioning when using a kickboard. Leg position can be taught using a bench. Breaststroke is extremely difficult to demonstrate in the water. On the pool deck, coaches and peers can tactile model breaststroke by lying prone on an exercise ball. To teach the correct arm movement for sculling water, use co-active movement. Start by having the swimmer feel the instructor or peer, then slowly fade touch cues. Transfer the skill to the water. Instructional strategies for skill development. Pre-teaching in pool. Peers can be teaching partners, as shown here using co-active movement for backstroke arms. Use co-active movement to practice form on backstroke legs. First position the student's back flat against the pool wall. The student practices kicking with straight legs by moving in tandem with a partner. Her left leg touching the partner's right leg. For a swimmer with a dual sensory impairment, small gym mats and lifeguard rescue tubes are useful props for a swimmer and intervener to lean on if they need to stop and exchange information while in the deep end. For example, if an intervener has to give tactile signing about how to improve a skill, it is impossible to do that and hold the side or tread water. Access to practice schedules. It is a good.
And we have a variety of series on different sports and activities. And then we also have a series on outdoor activities. So they kind of have a different visual, but we wanted to show a bit from an example on hiking. So again, a great activity that can be done by all ages and skill levels. So I'm gonna, this one wouldn't let me cue it up to where we wanted, but
5:13. There you
yep.
go.
So there's a few different ways to go hiking with someone who's visually impaired or blind. Bryce, would you like me to do a human guide for you? Yes. All right, which side would you like? My right side? All right, grab right on. All right, we'll hike from there. On the trail, step over those. Now the trail's a little bit wider. Walk side by side. How you feeling, bud? Good. No. Another way to hike is we have all-terrain cane. This is great for the woods, rocks, roots, and all kinds of imperfections will go over the earth. It's going to be able to scan much more efficiently and cover a little more distance so that they're more aware of their surroundings in front of them. Bryce, would you like to try out the all-terrain cane? Sure. All right, man. In front of you, you can grab the grip from the top. Is that a little too tall for you?
Yeah, I think
Yeah?
a little bit.
Okay, let's talk about adjusting this quick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring it up and I want you to put those handlebars one more time. I want to grip it really tight and I want you to twist this one back and this other one forward. What that's going to do is keep loosening
That's
it.
an all-terrain cane. It's brand new, just came out. It's for hiking.
Shorter or longer. So we'll make it down right about there. Can you twisting it back up opposite way? Keep twisting. Twist it really tight till it can't anymore. Awesome. Sweet. Are you gonna take it for a spin? Yeah, sure. All right.
He's showing the kids how to adjust their own
Left and right. Walk slowly at first.
hiking poles is important.
Big sweeping motion. Nice job. Keep coming. Great pace. Good job. Keep walking towards the sound of my voice. And another way is we use a trekking pole. These are designed to help us go uphill a little bit more efficiently and downhill without so much impact on our knees. They also allow us to step up the really high things and give us a little bit of boost, and we step down to something a little bit more, a little slower when we're coming down off something that's really high, like a big rock or something. On each stretching pole, there's a handle. I'm going to show you where that handle is. Okay. You want to reach out in front and find that handle?
So this video actually shows
Sure,
5 or
right along the
6
grip,
different ways
just like this.
that kids can be
So the other
guided in hiking,
right up.
using poles,
Just gonna
using
right there for you.
canes,
There you go.
using human
Alright.
guide. It's just really great options that kids need to learn and they can choose from. Okay,
First thing I like to use
you can move on, Pam. Thanks, Pam. So in all of these things, in swimming, in human guide, in running, in hiking, there's so many choices that we need to teach our kids how to self-advocate. And one of the biggest things we found at our camps is that kids aren't taught this. And when we looked into it, there's no self-advocacy curriculum for even kids without disabilities. And so this book just came out literally like 2 weeks ago. It's called Infusing Self-Advocacy into Physical Education and Health Education. And this is a whole entire book on how do you infuse self-advocacy and how do we teach self-advocacy, but also on our website, campabilities.org, under instructional materials, we made a self-advocacy playbook just for kids with visual impairments. And so there's a lot of resources now. We have a self-advocacy video that we made with kids with visual impairments talking about self-advocacy. But the most important thing we can give our kids is to teach them all the choices and then let them pick and be able to speak up for themselves. So we need them to find their specific need or their specific interest, help them find their voice, their support, help them understand what they can get, what they want, and that they don't have to accept what somebody else decides for them. And then the other thing is we help kids find their own voice and help other kids find their voice. That's part of the 4 components of self-advocacy. So in our research on self-advocacy, we found that there's 4 components: knowledge of self, knowledge of rights, communication, who to communicate with, and then leadership. So these are the 4 components of self-advocacy, and everything we do is based on these for our kids. And it's a big part of the self-advocacy playbook as well. So there's 4 components, and then there's 5 steps to self-advocacy. And we need to teach our kids to embrace each step and not be afraid. And so many times, and I don't even have a visual impairment. I get said no to. Pamela attests to this. People say no to me all the time, and we have to fight for everything we believe in. And so it's not just for kids with visual impairments, but I do think that they do have to fight for what they want more than other people have to fight with what they want. But step 1 is identify the issue. Step 2 is knowing what do you need to do to resolve the issue, not just complaining, but what do you need to help you get to that next step? And the biggest thing too is who can help you resolve that issue? How can you get what you want? And then you need to figure out how to effectively communicate your needs, not to be mean or demeaning or complaining, in a professional, positive way. And then reflecting on the outcome. And the big thing is, did you get what you want? And do you have to continue fighting? Or do you need a thank you letter to thank them for giving you what you wanted in the way you wanted it? And so, and then the other part, when you talk about the 4 components of self-advocacy, one of the components is leadership. Now that I know how to advocate for myself, now I can help advocate for others or help them advocate for themselves. So self-advocacy is just not promoted enough. We talk about self-determination, but you can't be self-determined without self-advocacy. So we're just now validating a questionnaire on self-advocacy, and we're going to be doing a lot more work on this if anybody wants to join us. It's really important, I think.
Lauren and Pamela, there's a question that says, what about skating, both ice skating and roller skating? It's really rare in PE classes, but can or be a field trip. If there's time, can you maybe guide through that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, let's just get through the rest of this, and I have some great tips because we do that a lot. Thank you. So on our website, so APH has a lot of really great resources, and now they're free downloads. So this gross motor development curriculum, it's great. It's got lots of pictures. It breaks every locomotor and object control skill down and how to teach it. This is a free download on our website under instructional materials, under books. This book's called Physical Education and Sport for People with Visual Impairment and Deafblindness. This is a textbook for both physical education professionals and vision impairment professionals. And this is available through the American Printing House for the Blind at this time. And most of you, I assume, also work with kids with visual impairment and additional disabilities. This book, Physical Education for Children with Moderate to Severe Disabilities, has lots and lots of resources, has lesson plans for teaching kids with visual impairment and additional disabilities. And that's through Human Kinetics. This one's available through Human Kinetics, but it's just great resource. Universal Design for Learning will help your physical education teachers design those classes to meet the needs of all kids. I am so tired of hearing teachers say, I'm sorry, the class moves too fast for you. You can't join this class. That's not acceptable. It's not right. It's not legal if your child's IEP says inclusive PE. So you might want to recommend this book for any physical education teacher who's excluded your children from physical education, because they shouldn't be excluded. Go ahead, Pam.
All right, so I wanted to stop this share and then jump on to the site to show you if this transition works nice and smooth, I hope. All right, so everyone should see the site. This is the site that Melissa keeps putting up there for you. This is where everything is. So if you go to campabilities.org and then you click on instructional materials, that's where you're going to find loads and loads of resources. So right here, I'm under the instructional materials, and we have what we had our inclusion series. And with that, we were focusing on different sports, but within those sports, we're teaching a variety of motor skills. So it's really breaking things down. So it doesn't have to be the whole sport. If you want to just focus on some of those basic skills, those are in there as well. This is including the cross country video that I had shown, as well as the track video. Within those, you can see some more breakdowns of just running tips, some modifications, tips, strategies to use. We didn't have time to include everything in there, but I recommend those two videos. We have the swimming video that we showed you a little bit on here as well. This motor development video, this is the one I showed the tail end, which showed the curl ups, the push ups, some basic fitness skills, but the rest of this video has the locomotor skills and object control skills, and this pairs with the motor development curriculum that Lauren just showed you. So again, the book and the video are available on here. Let me see what else I wanted to highlight. Here we have a self-advocacy video, and then we have an outdoor adventure inclusion series, and that's where we have the hiking video we showed you a clip of, but we also have paddleboarding, rock climbing, kayaking, fishing, and biking. So a lot of different tips. All of the books that we have available for free are here as well. Tip sheets. So sometimes, everyone's really busy. So tip sheets can be a great way to get a lot of information very quickly. We have one on inclusive home fitness. Locomotor skills is another good one. Running strategies. So for some of these fitness things, human guide, fitness activities. So a wide variety of tip sheets if you're interested in those. I wanted to jump back. And the Lavelle resources for children with moderate and severe disabilities. We talked specifically on these in a previous talk, but if you do work with kids that have more than just a visual impairment, we get into a variety of different types of skill assessments and tip sheets based on, these are visual impairment and, so visual impairment and autism, visual impairment and cerebral palsy. So keep in mind, these are available, as well as we have a video on foundational skills teaching children with visual impairments and additional disabilities. So obviously way too much than what we could share in just this talk. So I'm going to jump back because there's a couple of other things I wanted to mention and share with you. So let's see if I can get back to where I was, the tricky part, bouncing back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead if it lets me. Okay, so these are all the videos. Here's our contacts. Melissa, if you could maybe also share that in the chat. I don't know if that's easier. So
Absolutely.
feel free to contact us anytime. Mine's pbeach@brockport.edu and Lauren's is lieberman@brockport.edu. And we wanted to mention a couple of things that are coming up that we're particularly excited about. So we have, locally for us, I know you all are from all over the place, but in the end of January, we're going to have a small conference for families of children with visual impairments and additional disabilities, focusing on aquatics. That's going to be at the Jewish Community Center in Rochester, and open to anybody and everybody who works with individuals with visual impairments, regardless of age or what you're working on. We have an international symposium that is going to be held in Parma. We held the first one in Scotland, and that was in 2019. And we're very excited to be able to run another one. So it's June 8th through 11th. You can come and present, share practical tips or something more research. We have really kind of a focus on both ends, so practical as well as research, but it's going to be a really, really exciting conference. I don't know, Lauren, if you have anything you want to add on either of those.
No, we would love, if anybody's near us, they want to come to that one-day conference at the end of January. We're working with kids with visual impairments and additional disabilities on a Lavelle grant. We're going to be making a video about how do you teach swimming and aquatics to kids with visual impairments and additional disabilities at that conference. And then just our international symposium, it's just the lifespan on physical activity and sports. And we're really excited to share what we do with people from other countries and hope that we can all go there and learn together. And people are welcome to come to either of these, one a little more local and then one international. So this is just some things that are coming up. And I just wanted to, I want to thank Pam because she always makes our presentations way better than they would have been if it were just me. And then I also just want to talk about ice skating and roller skating and rollerblading. The way I teach that is, it depends how much the background the child has. At our skating ring, we have these walkers that go on the ice, and the kids can start with the walker, or they can start against the wall and then hold your hand. And then you just take little steps. And then I do push, glide, push, glide, push, glide. And just even let kids just start where they are. Some of the kids go on the ice for ice skating without skates on first, just to feel what it's like. Then they put the skates on, and then we use the walker, and it's progressive. So I just, make sure you just break it down and then just meet them where they are and just show them that it's not that scary. And if they need two people to hold them up, that's okay too. I hope that helps a bit. So this last slide says promote the full potential of each child. And I believe that that's what we do every day. And we hope that this next generation is going to be more fit than that last generation, and each one subsequently better than the last one, from all the resources and equipment that we're promoting in our field.
Right,
So-
COVID didn't help anything, so we're trying to get out of that and get people back active and
Yeah.
back to where we were beforehand, so. Thank you everyone for attending. We've really enjoyed having these workshops. It's been a lot of fun and we're learning a lot too from sharing information and hearing from you all, so it's been a pleasure.
It's been absolutely amazing. I have to agree, I'm very sad that this series is ending, but it has been an absolute pleasure, and I have no doubt that your work will continue, and we will probably throw some more webinars together. So thank you all.
And this is Lauren speaking. I do just want to say that Pam and I can do workshops for school districts, or we can Zoom into conferences or come if you'd like. But you know, this is one thing we love to do, is we love to help people solve problems and get to that next level for their child and help them meet their full potential. And if your kids aren't meeting their full potential, or if you're running into barriers or people need trainings, just come to see us, because we'd love to help you do that.